Hi everyone, good afternoon. We see participants trickling in. We have got close to about 500 registrations for this. So we'll give it maybe a minute or two for all of you to join in, and then we'll get started. So just allow us maybe a couple more minutes before we dive right in. Maybe just one more minute before we start. I'm seeing a final few guys just joining in. So we'll give it maybe a minute and then get started. All right, great. So I think we are 5 minutes into the broadcast. Let's quickly dive into the topic. Um, Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. Really appreciate the time that you are spending to participate in this panel discussion today. A quick round of introduction. I am Anirban. I will lead the global revenue function for Metal. And I have with me today my colleague Subhro, who is the Vice President of Psychometrics and Data Analytics at Mercer Metal. And we also have Vivek, who's a Senior Product Manager and the driving force behind Metal's 360-degree tool as a solution. So what we are discussing today, is 360 feedback. It's a widely used tool, very widely known, I think, to most of you in the audience. As many of us would know, right, it has originated from, or rather you can trace its roots back to World War II, when the military used it to assess performance of its soldiers. And since then, it has got introduced in the business world around about the 1950s. And then we had companies like Exxon and GE, use it in the evaluation of their employees, in their appraisal processes, and it has stuck to HR as one of the indispensable tools since then. In very recent times, I think many of us also are aware of the examples of organizations like Netflix, where 360 has been used, or rather forms an integral part of their culture. This organization fosters a very open culture of 360, where you can have live 360 sessions and even sharing the feedback that you get with the larger organization. And that, in their view, promotes candor, that promotes transparency, and I think is very, very integral and fundamental to how they want to build the organization. And there are a lot of examples in that entire spectrum of how transparent or opaque you would want that 360 intervention to become. But what we really want to do or attempt in the next 1 hour um, is to lay out new possibilities, of its use in front of you. We want to discuss some of the live use cases where we have engaged with certain, global MNCs, based in India or outside of it, who have used 360, for several unique use cases. We would like to answer as many questions as you have. So we want this to be a very participative, and we have kept hopefully a large amount of time towards the end for Q&A. And in this entire process, we really want you to get thinking on how you can adapt and use this tool for some unique requirements in your organizations. So that's the objective, I think, which all of us want to achieve together. And I think right now, just to understand how heavily we use this tool, how familiar we are with this tool in our organizations, let me request my colleague to bring up a quick poll on the screen. It is just to understand, what do you use 360 in your organization for? Do you at all use it? Please feel free to choose as many options that apply. There is not, it's a multiple answer kind of a question. And we'll just give it maybe a minute and a half till the results trickle in, and we will dive right in after we gather the insights from here. So Vivek, Subhro, welcome to this session. In the meanwhile, I think we are expecting some interesting results to come out of this poll. Let's see how do you each of you interpret those results before we move on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Anirban, for introducing us, and thanks to everyone who's come here. Really hope to understand a lot from you as well, the kind of questions that you have while you have maybe implemented 360 in your organization. So looking forward to trying to run through them and maybe have an interactive session.
Thanks, Anirban. Great to be here. Wonderful audience, and looking forward to a wonderful session.
Oh, the results are in. All right, so that's an interesting mix, right? So yeah, so let's quickly go through it. So I think very few of us use it for high potential identification. That's not surprising. I think the largest use case that we see is around appraisal and feedback, which has been the traditional use case for 360. So no surprises there either. But it's great to see, that about 40% of the audience say that they use it for development and training. But at least the statistic that's a bit surprising to me, Vivek, Subhro, is that almost 36% of us, we do not use 360 in our organization. So that's a bit, surprising to me as well. So I think, we have a fair mix, in the audience. From there, then, without much ado, let's quickly dive into this topic. And, let's understand. Let's turn to you, Subhro, because you're an expert on, implementing tools, assessment centers, for talent management across, several of our customers. You've done that, firsthand, and that includes 360 interventions as well. So why don't you help us understand that why is 360 such a powerful tool when it comes to non-traditional use cases? For example, use cases like employee development, high potential identification, or even impacting the culture and leadership within organizations.
Yeah. Can you just move to probably a couple of slides down? Thanks, everyone. And I think the poll results were quite interesting. Honestly, I think I could see a decent amount of split between people using it across different use cases and people not using it as well. So that's something I think bit of surprise for me, but I think some area where everybody is sort of moving ahead and trying to incorporate feedback in some form or the other. So I believe that while people would have answered that they are not using 360, but they would be using some form of feedback mechanism within their organization, and that's where I think I want to really focus on and kind of take you through why 360 is such an important tool and how it becomes very effective. One another interesting thing from the polls that I found was few people did mention that they were using it to impact culture in the organization, which is great to see. Honestly, I think it's one of the lesser spoken about elements of a 360 implementation, and I'll come to that as well. But while I start, I think everybody understands, the importance of feedback in an organizational setting more so. And this is a quote that has kind of stuck with me. I mean, feedback is the breakfast of champions. That's how a lot of big leaders, they like to start their day understanding what feedback is coming through. However, one of the biggest issues or problem of sort of using it in the best manner is how you kind of incorporate feedback, how you provide feedback. And traditionally, that has been a challenge in terms of when we think about feedback, usually what comes to mind is the one-on-one performance appraisals that people have in mind, right? And that's was typically the use case people started relating 360 as well. And it also got attached to pure performance appraisals because a lot of tools which were meant for performance management came bundled with 360 as well. So that kind of stuck around for 360. However, feedback in itself, if you use it in a one-on-one situation, it can be tricky. And there are certain elements that need to be, really thought through and taken care to make it effective. First of all, I think negative feedback is definitely always a difficult thing. I mean, and giving it one-on-one makes it even more difficult, both for the provider and this feedback seeker as well. And any sort of negative feedback can put the seeker or the person receiving the feedback in a difficult position. And also the provider, I mean, they may not want to really, depending on the reaction of the person receiving the feedback, they may not really be able to provide the right feedback. And in that kind of a scenario, sometimes the focus shifts from the person providing, the feedback, which is the key part, to how it is being provided or the person who's providing the feedback. And it sort of loses its meaning. And I think that's where also 360 makes a big impact. I mean, it's a systemic, structural way of really providing feedback, focusing on the feedback and not on the person really providing the feedback. There are also other things which kind of derail, utilizing feedback in the right manner. And one of them is having a very generic feedback. And even if it's a positive feedback, sometimes you say you're doing a great job. And that's about the feedback that you get. Or sometimes you're saying, you need to, put in more. And that kind of feedback, while it broadly, directionally, you give an idea, but you don't know what you really need to work on. And that's where, again, 360, because it's formed on an organizational competency framework, it is relatable to the key behaviors that you need on the job and on the organization that you are there. That kind of really drives the message home without making it a stressful or a very difficult experience, both for the provider and the seeker. So that's something I think that is very important as well. And in terms of also the importance of having a structured competency framework or a structured questionnaire to kind of dish out feedback, one of the things that's also important is that remains consistent across the organization. In the absence of something like that, a lot of times what happens is people have different expectations of the role, which may not really align with what the organization wants. And while in a certain division, the manager might expect the junior to be how they have grown through the system or they have grown through the ranks. Whereas at this phase in time, the organization might be thinking about certain other things that they want to look at. So the feedback then does not get in line with what the entire organization needs. So these are different challenges. And I think 360 is highly impactful because it is sort of addressing all of them, and not just one, but all of them. And maybe we'll probably try to address the three key use cases that are really up and coming other than performance appraisals, and how 360 sort of is the right or the most impactful tool here for that use case. So maybe we'll move a slide here. Yeah, so I'll pick up the one which most people are, already using it. We saw in the poll as well how it helps in employee development. And this is something that I was talking about, one of the core issues with feedback as well, that sometimes it's not on specific observable behaviors. The good part about a 360 is that the entire statement, the entire questionnaire, is very oriented towards the kind of behaviors that you really want to get feedback on. So that kind of ensures that the feedback that you get is very directed and actionable. I think without the actionable part, it sort of loses its meaning. And like I was telling, that this is aligned to the organization and to the role. So that really helps clearly delineate the kind of development areas that are there, the kind of strengths that you have that make you like an asset for the organization. And with this, it really helps in building personalized development plans as well, having very structured, clean feedback, and not just from your manager, right? From your peers, from your juniors, and sometimes even from customers as well. So having this, it becomes a very targeted employee development tool, which is very personalized as well. So that's where 360 really clicks in. And there are a couple of other use cases also that I want to talk about. The next one being high potential, how it can be used. So can we move to the next slide? Yeah. This is something that I saw that only around 9% of people were using it. And something I think people have started using it more and more in recent times. And this is probably one of the most important, I would say, initiatives that an organization does for their employees, close to one of the most important. That is figuring out who their high potentials are, investing in their high potential talent, thus ensuring that their leadership pipeline is also good and strong enough, and their organization is also moving in the right direction. And however, organizations spend a lot of time and effort in, once they're selected, in kind of grooming them, providing them the right opportunities. But sometimes they don't invest that much in identification of the right individuals and making it fair and transparent for everyone. That's where I think having a 360, in addition to other measures that are already there, 360 obviously is not the only thing you need to look at. But 360, the feedback coming from multiple people, not just the manager, even the seekers get an opportunity to rate themselves. That, along with different metrics like maybe an assessment center or a pure assessment battery that is combined with the 360 results and certain performance metrics. One of the key benefits of having a 360 also is that sometimes performance is boiled down to a single metric, maybe a rating on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 4. And sometimes it doesn't capture all the necessary behaviors that you want in a high potential candidate. That's where 360 kind of really shines through. And we really have seen this kind of use case really jump up in the associations that we have had. And we really think that this is something that is very, very helpful for organizations. Moving on to the last one, which is how it impacts organizational culture. I was really pleasantly surprised to see the poll results. I think people are already using it, which is a very good step. And I think that kind of firms our belief that this is another up and coming and innovative use case that really helps to transform the organization. More so in the situation that we find ourselves over the last 2 years, right? People working from remote, from their homes remotely. The normal feedback channels sort of get muted. Your water cooler conversations, meeting people from different teams at lunch breaks and all of that kind of goes down. So the kind of influence that the top management or the key stakeholders in the organization can have in the culture might get a little minimized. But that's where having a systematic 360 feedback really, really helps. First of all, the ability to speak up for even the junior most employee, that kind of really creates a culture of trust and transparency, which is unparalleled. And I have a favorite author here on culture, Daniel Coyle, in his book, The Culture Code, really kind of highlights how having this culture of trust, transparency, and something that they call a psychological safety, being able to really speak up, contribute without, looking at whether you are, a senior member or whether you are an IC level entry that are entrant that have just got into the organization. The creating this culture of trust, transparency, and providing psychological safety that has a very big impact to everyone in the organization, and that really encourages people to be more inclusive, and it really focuses on the performance of people and their contributions rather than anybody's personality. That's where I think 360 also creates a very, very huge impact. These are three up and coming things that we have seen. There are obviously a few other kind of interesting cases as well, but while I've been speaking more from maybe a theoretical standpoint of how it makes sense, I think we have already seen a lot of our clients take use of this, make the best out of this. And I think Anirban, he himself has led a lot of these deals, and right from, working with a client as a partner and then implementing it with them. So maybe Anirban, you could actually shed some light on how we have helped organizations in each of these use cases by talking us through some live client case studies that we have worked with.
Oh, absolutely, Subhro. And I think it was pretty insightful what you said. And I just want to pick on a couple of things, just to summarize this for the audience. So one, of course, is feedback. Of course, is important at every level in the organization, but it really depends on how well we are structuring that feedback, right? How we are dishing that out for employees to actually work on them and not get perturbed or sort of bogged down by the kind of comments that come in. And I think that's what 360 plays a great role, because the degree of anonymity, I think, is something that can be tweaked, something that can be aligned to the organization's culture, right? So you can have Netflix on one end of the spectrum, and you can have a very secretive organization on the other. But we can actually play around, within that spectrum. The other part also is, the entire aspect of inclusion, on how feedback can be given right from an entry level to somebody at a leadership, which is extremely, extremely important, I think, which when it comes to shaping up the culture in organizations. So I think two great takeaways, at least for me, from what you said, Shubhro. Coming to some of the live, use cases. And I think, we always talk about 360 from a perspective of feedback and get lost in discussions around appraisal. But I just wanted to pick a few, which has got a different flavor to it. All right, I believe there's a comment that I need to be a bit louder. Am I audible now? Is it better?
Yeah, I think I can hear you, Anirban.
Oh, all right, great, fantastic. Thanks, Shilpa, for that feedback. So, yeah, very quickly. So jumping on to some of the live use cases, I think which are a bit different in flavor. So I think the first bullet, if you can bring it on, is around digital transformation, for one of the largest public sector banks in India. Now, we would hardly imagine, 360 being used in digital transformation, but as it happens, it was one of the core tools that this public sector bank utilized to, power their digital transformation. The idea was that, when you embark in a digital transformation initiative, you need to work on newer competencies, right? So you need to develop a competency framework that's future-proof, that guides you, to the skills and competencies you want to achieve in your senior leaders. And this bank worked with an external strategy consultant to help them build that competency framework, mostly targeted to the AGM and the GM level folks, in the bank. There were almost 800 of them. There were 7,000 people who gave feedback. But they did not use only 360-degree feedback, to get, or to rather understand, what are the development areas. They paired it with a virtual assessment center, for the same, set of people. And then the virtual assessment center and the 360-degree feedback, they were seen together to pinpoint the areas of improvement, for these set of leaders. And the bank went ahead and onboarded certified executive coaches, conducted training sessions, and they are actually on that coaching session, or that coaching path for at least the next 8 to 10 months, from here on. So this serves as a great use case for us to understand that how 360 can be used in conjunction with some of the other established tools, right, that measure behavior or skills more objectively, for that matter. And why this is so important is, for us to realize that in a world where we are moving towards always understanding an objective measure of skills and competencies, it's also important that we add a perspective or a nuance when it comes to the demonstration of those skills and competencies, or as perceived by the peers, the subordinates, the superiors that you work with, right? So I think these two together formed a very, very important exercise for the bank to be able to pinpoint the areas of development and work on them, so that they're future ready as well. The next one, is for an FMCG company in Sri Lanka. And why I picked this one is, this is where I think most organizations start. Now, as we, sort of said somewhere in the beginning, that many organizations might not use 360, but they might have some form of existing feedback mechanism, within the organization. It might just be a 90-degree feedback. Your superiors come and give you feedback, or your peers come and tell you something around the water cooler. These are all feedback loops, right? What this organization, wanted to do is to move away from the 90-degree feedback that they were using, so which is a superior, led feedback only, to something which is a holistic 360-degree feedback across all the feedback givers. And they really wanted to do it at scale. And that's where, a lot of people struggle, because if you really want to pull off a 360-degree at scale in an organization which is medium to large, there is a lot of admin tasks that come in the way, right? You have to collate a lot of responses. There's a lot of paperwork. There's a lot of editing, masking, reporting. All of that is, a part of this entire initiative. But what we enabled them to do was to automate this entire process. So we removed the entire human dependence in terms of rolling out this process. And as a result, almost 4 times the number of feedback seekers were able to go through the process. And that automation actually helped them to do a 360-degree initiative at scale within the whole organization. And one nuance here was that apart from the scores that you actually get in a 360-degree report, and I think we'll showcase some of that in the final section of this conversation as well. This organization also incorporated open-ended feedback, from all the feedback givers, which were scrutinized, which were discussed with experts, and using that, they were able to come up with a far more detailed personal development plan for every employee, who went through this 360 on the new leadership framework that they dished out. So I think that these are the two, interesting examples I wanted to pick at the start. The third one, I think this is something which many of us will relate to. I think DEI has been, one of the core agenda, in the leadership. It has been one of the core agenda in boardrooms across all organizations, and the take of organizations towards DEI has been quite different, right? So somebody just wants to go out and hire, more of, women leaders, or create diversity through talent acquisition. While there are some organizations, who are actually focusing on their internal employees, on women leaders who are a part of the workforce, and trying to, create a very structured career path for them with executive coaching interventions wherever required. So I think this organization I'm speaking about is one of the world's largest IT services and consulting organization based in the US. And they took the latter approach, to their DEI initiatives, or furthering their DEI initiatives. So instead of focusing on coaching just at C-suite, they used a 360-degree tool only within the group of women leaders, right, who were in the mid to senior levels in the organization. And what they were looking for, was very constructive feedback on areas like emotional intelligence, on areas like people management skills, right, among other things. And using that feedback, they were able to actually create a development path for each of these participants, and therefore, create some coaching interventions along the way so that they could rise from their current leadership positions to maybe, within the C-suite, and therefore further the diversity agenda, within organizations. So I think it was extremely, a well managed and a well thought out implementation of 360. We are still, continuing in this partnership and in this engagement of ours, and we really hope to see very strong results, at the end of the day, when organizations start focusing on its internal workforce and grooming them to be leaders of tomorrow. The final one that I wanted to pick, and I think it's a bit of a surprise, when it came to us, frankly. And we spoke about 360 being used, at all levels, in an organization, right from an entry level to, somebody at a leadership. But I think this went a step ahead and actually used it for management trainees, right, who were not even on the permanent roles in the organization. And it was actually, frankly, one of the first use cases that we supported around 360, and I thought I'll speak about it maybe for a minute. The idea was, and this organization was, or rather is, the world's largest brewery. They're based in the EU. And the idea was, that when a management trainee has joined the organization, the decision to either, confirm them as an employee or to extend the probation for them would be based, among other things, on a very structured 360-degree feedback from the organization. And we know that many of the MTs, they might not have direct reports, but of course there is a peer group, there's a set of superiors, there are maybe clients with whom they work within a short span of time that they have spent in the organization, and feedback from all of them were collected, they were analyzed, and they were utilized as one of the key inputs to finally make that decision on whether to retain them, as a permanent employee. And even in cases, where the organization made a decision not to retain the, MTs, the entire detailed area of development was shared with every participant, right? And that showed the amount of skin in the game that the entire organization put forward, for a young workforce. It was extremely well appreciated by the management trainees themselves, because it's a very coherent and a very holistic feedback on their skills, their capabilities, which can actually help them shape up their future as well. And it also demonstrated the organization's buy-in, or rather the investment that they were ready to make to groom a very, very young workforce. So I think these were some of the cases that really I wanted to speak about. And I think, as you can see, many of these also help us to think about, have we exhausted all the possibilities of utilizing 360? In my view, we are just scratching the surface, with appraisals and feedback, and we really can think through several other use cases where this tool can be utilized effectively within organizations. So let me take a pause here and turn back to another expert. So Vivek, as I discussed earlier, has been the driving force behind Mercer Metal's 360-degree product that's been very well accepted within a large set of customers across the world. And one of the key things, Vivek, which I would turn to you to talk about is, while all of these initiatives are great, right? A lot of organizations can come and utilize 360, but at the end of the day, the proof of the pudding is, did it really work? And I don't think it really works if we do not have a clear view as to what are the best practices of utilizing or implementing a 360 in an organization. And paired with that, what are the kinds of features that you would really want to build in a 360-degree tool, which you would want to run across the organization. So, let me turn to you to understand your perspective and thoughts around these aspects.
Sure, Anirban. Thanks. And thanks for sharing such interesting case studies. Shows the power of feedback. I'll be covering, some of the best practices, and then jump on to how do you go about choosing the right tool, right? So running a successful 360 program is both an art and science, and I'll cover how is that so. Starting with the best practices. So number one, next slide, please. Number one is creating the right questionnaire, right? And this is the most critical part of the whole program, right? Just a minute, yeah. So it is said that what gets measured gets improved, but if you don't measure the right things, you won't see any improvements, correct? No matter if you use the best tool in the market, but if the questionnaire or the assessment on which the feedback is being given is not curated by experts, your program has a much higher likelihood of failure, right? So it's really important for you to involve the experts early on, and they'll help you curate a scientifically backed and a relevant questionnaire that they will discuss with you all your unique cultural requirements, all your requirements, and they'll come up with a customized questionnaire, specific to your needs. The next one is sensitizing employees. Now, this is again a very important part of the whole exercise. You need to make employees aware about the overall objective of this feedback exercise and the whole process. Or it's natural for employees to have certain fears, apprehensions, certain doubts about it, and they need to be cleared, right? Also, you need to inform that this feedback exercise is for their own development, and this feedback is going to be anonymous, and also sensitize them that they need to fill this feedback in a very honest manner and provide feedback which is constructive and which is actionable for the feedback seeker, right? uh, Next one, next slide, please. Yeah, empowering employees. Now, employees need to feel, they need to believe that they are a partner in the process and not just subjects. You need to keep the communication really transparent, have all the objectives and outcomes clearly defined. And if you get employees if you get employees to buy in early, nothing can stop your whole exercise from being a success. Next one, please. Right. So running the whole program surveys with great completion rates is just half the job done, and the journey actually starts when post the surveys are done and the reports and all the insights are ready. You need to plan out coaching and professional coaching and development planning sessions with the employees, conduct group sessions or one-on-one coaching, professional coaching feedback, and share this development plan with the employees. It's a great practice to run another 360 program after some months, let's say after 6 months. And a lot of organizations do this. This helps you validate if the employees are actually improving on the gaps, and closing those gaps which were identified in the last feedback cycle. So next one is providing a great employee experience, right? And frankly, it's all about employees and their experience. Out here, what matters is the kind of tool which you choose. Of course, you need to take care of all the other practices I shared earlier. So, and how do you go about choosing this tool? I will cover that in the upcoming section, which I'll talk about. Right. So Selecting a tool, a good feedback tool, can be really daunting because there's so many options and features being pitched in the market. So I will just try and simplify it for you. Just pick top 5 key things to look for in the right 360 feedback tool, because that'll be, like Anirban mentioned, it'll be key to the success of your program. Number one, again, I'll go back to what I mentioned earlier. Questionnaire, again, it's extremely important. Like I said, creating the right assessment. And out here, it's important that the vendor which you are selecting for your 360 feedback tool, they also provide experts to you. These are qualified experts who work closely with you and who understand your needs and your unique requirements and create this questionnaire, right from defining the various competencies, statements, the behavioral indicators, creating the whole blueprint. It is best done by experts, right? So any pure play tool out there in the market which doesn't provide this kind of a these kind of experts or this kind of a service can be a stumbling block for your program. Next one is, I think it goes without saying, apart from employee experience, it's important to have a great admin experience as well, right? So the tool needs to be simple and easy to use and easy to administer, right? You don't want to be dependent on the vendor and go through multiple hassles of calling and emailing just to get simple things done, right? So it's important to have a simple, easy to use tool so that you can focus on things that really matter. Next one is capabilities around very strong employee communications. You need to, like I mentioned previously, you need to be very transparent with the employees, keep them in the loop. So that's where you need to have a good tool needs to have strong capabilities of employee communication, things like fully customizable emails, ad hoc and automated reminders, being able to extend, let's say, the survey deadline and inform the employees. These are some must-have things. And in fact, even small capabilities being able to detect bounced emails, it can actually help you avoid difficult situations later on. So this one is about empowering the employees. Like I said, this is another key aspect to make the employees feel that they are in control, they are a partner in the program. A lot of organizations these days, they allow employees to initiate their own feedback, right, without even involving the admin, and also to nominate their own feedback providers, right? And this can the list of providers can then be vetted by somebody, let's say their manager, right? It's a key feature to make your employees feel empowered and a part of the program. The last one is seamless employee experience. I can't emphasize enough on this. It's all about creating the best employee experience, an easy to use, intuitive, mobile friendly interface so that employees can take these surveys on the go, right? And so that they can also have regular reminders so that they don't miss on the deadline and submit their responses, and being able to easily save responses on the fly. These are very small things but matter a lot in providing a great experience. And then later on, also being able to share the reports, all the insights with the employees right in their inbox, along with their managers. If you want to share reports with them as well, you just need one-click report sharing with everybody. These are some small but very impactful features you should look for. And just talking about reports, there are so many tools out there in the market with very detailed, really complex and dull reports. And in fact, many of these reports would also require certifications for you to actually interpret them accurately, right? So you need to be careful about this fact that the reporting needs to be simple, easy to understand, but full with lots of powerful and rich insights like blind spots, hidden strengths, areas of development, open-ended feedback, and various competency ratings. So these were some key factors you should consider when selecting a good 360 feedback tool. We'll now just take a few minutes and jump onto a quick product video.
For most of us, it is much easier to figure out 5 strengths and 5 weaknesses. Do you know why? Studies suggest that most people are familiar with their strengths, but are oblivious to their weaknesses. And this ignorance can be the biggest inhibitor to professional development. HR leaders have devised the answer to this problem: 360-degree feedback. 360-degree feedback is a professional exercise aimed at gathering holistic and honest information about an individual from stakeholders such as managers, peers, leaders, subordinates, and even clients. The feedback is then used for critical employee development initiatives, such as training needs identification, high potential identification, and performance appraisals. However, most organizations struggle with execution. 360-degree feedback projects require organization-wide efforts, consistent participation, and significant sensitive data management. Hence, it mandates specialized tools to undertake this exercise. Introducing Mercer Metal 360 View, the most employee-friendly 360-degree feedback tool on the market. It makes managing and providing 360 feedback easy and seamless, resulting in notably higher completion rates, ensuring the success of 360-degree projects. How has Mercer Metal done it? Through 360 View, we have mastered the following 3 aspects: ease of administration, ease of use, and powerful data analytics. Firstly, managing such massive projects is challenging. Therefore, we have made it seamless for administrators to roll out surveys successfully. 360 View empowers HR teams through intuitive dashboards to track progress, bulk uploads to save human effort, pre-built templates to expedite survey creation. Secondly, filling surveys is an additional task for employees. Thus, we have made it super easy for them. 360 View empowers employees through a mobile-friendly interface to take surveys anytime, anywhere. Auto-save option to ensure no loss of data. Auto-generated reminders to keep you updated. Thirdly, post-survey initiatives into employee development make 360 feedback projects truly successful. Thus, 360 View comes with insightful, actionable reports with a personalized development plan for each employee. The report contains hidden strengths where others rate them higher than self, blind spots where others rate them lower than self, areas of improvement where all ratings are low, strengths where all ratings are high, and there is more. You can use our pre-built templates or customize them according to your unique requirements. Our psychometric experts support you in creating these personalized surveys. All this makes 360 View your go-to 360-degree feedback tool. So take the first step toward targeted employee development with Mercer Metal 360 View. Schedule your demo at www.metal.com or write to us at contact@metal.com.
Great. So I already see a few questions come our way, and I think Subhro and Vivek have already answered some of them live. But there are specifically a few interesting ones I think we should really pick on, and especially the one, Subhro, around bias. At least in our engagements, we have seen that come up quite a bit, that how do we eliminate bias from these responses. So would you want to get a bit deeper into the response that you provided there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a very important question and something which is sort of one of the core tenets of a 360-based feedback system is to kind of remove or minimize as much as possible the bias in a feedback process. like we talked about, typically the feedback used to be one way and 90-degree, which is basically the manager used to provide feedback to the employee. But how 360 kind of really attacks that is you have multiple people who have worked closely with the employee over the course of past maybe 6 months, 3 months, or a year, providing them feedback on the kind of behaviors that they have observed. It's not even any based on any assumptions that they have, that they think the person might have, but on clear observed behaviors that they have. So having your peers, having your juniors, having people from different teams who you have interacted with, who might be junior, might be senior to you, and finally having customers also give it. I think these are core elements of then understanding feedback from an entire 360 view. And hence the impact of a manager feedback is not as high as in the normal system that might have been. And the other interesting part here is also that as self also you give feedback, right? So you also get to see where you consider yourself versus where different groups of people are actually seeing you behave. So you can actually kind of see maybe there are certain patterns emerging in how you work and behave with different sort of people as well. So it is sort of as close to the ground reality that you can get when you have different groups kind of providing you feedback in a structured manner.
Yeah, absolutely makes sense. Vivek, would you want to pick the one which I think again asks about how do we choose a 360 tool for my organization? I think we covered the broad features we should look for, but is there a framework that someone can use?
Right. So although we covered in the webinar, but just to bring it up again, I would say top three things: having the ability to create the right questionnaire, because that's foundational to every 360 feedback survey. Next thing is the whole experience of the whole admin experience, employee experience. Simple, easy to use, right? And that would be number two. And the third thing, and that's where the value comes out, is having simple, easy to understand, but really powerful and insightful reports. I think I would pick these three things over everything else.
Great. I think that's helpful. There's a very interesting question that popped up, I think. Can AI ever replace physical exam? I'm not sure if it's connected to the webinar topic, but I think we should attempt to answer that. Yes, Subhro, what is your take on this?
So I think if I try to understand it properly, I mean, maybe the question is kind of asking whether if somebody is physically talking to somebody, understanding the nuances that how the candidate is responding, maybe can AI sort of maybe try and replace that? I think some of the interesting elements of how parts of that can be clearly replaced is especially when open-ended feedback is done at scale. A lot of times, maybe the administrators, they don't have enough bandwidth to kind of go through each open-ended responses and really create summary for candidates. That's a good area where AI not just can do a sentiment evaluation, but also pick out key things that people are talking about you, and at a function level, at an organization level, to really pick out what people are talking about, what the tone, tenor, and the key part of feedback that people are giving. So I believe there are certain multiple elements, especially in scale, that AI is really good at. And even a physical exam might also be biased, which at least a system with, and it doesn't necessarily need an AI always. Even a basic 360 system can also provide a good solid replacement for a physical exam, because sometimes that has a lot of biases inbuilt into the system. And maybe Vivek, I'm happy to hear what you think about this.
No, I think I agree, but I think the fundamentals of bringing this back to 360, I think well, the question was about examinations, but I think it really 360 is all about other people's perceptions about you. It's not an AI's perception of you. So I think given that we humans need to work in teams, We need to work with each other. I think the relevance of 360 will survive the onslaught of AI, if I might call it. But of course, the exams themselves, the way that we evaluate, I think, will constantly see more and more innovation, which is powered by AI. But 360, I think, will stand the test of time. Subhro, is there any other question that you would want to pick around
Yeah,
the?
yeah, I do. I mean, I think there was a question from Robert on norming for 360, and especially, where culture might have a people, their way of giving feedback and the severity that kind of really depends on the kind of nation, region you are in, or even the organization that you are in. I think that's a very interesting question, and that's where I think the best way to move ahead is to kind of conduct 360 surveys not as a one point intervention but over time, and really use the first one as a solid benchmark or a norm to see how things are moving in the organization, because every organization will have their own flavor, and the impact of a 360 is really understanding the nuances of that organization, creating the right questionnaire then, and then taking feedback on that. So even though people might have a certain way of providing feedback, the intent should be to kind of move that ticker more and more to certain inch that you're getting. And as they keep on doing it, as they see that the feedback that they're sharing is creating positive impact, that will then start creating this culture of people wanting feedback themselves and maybe being more open to share more directed on more negative feedback. So that, I think that's sort of a best practice for norms instead of trying to generalize any organization across a huge data set.
Great. So I think if there are no other unanswered questions we'd want to pick now, there are some on which we can get back with more clarification post this webinar. But I would really want to thank everyone for joining this webinar and hearing us out. Um, what I also wanted to talk about is we have actually collated a lot of these insights that were shared today in form of a collateral in a brochure around 360, which summarizes some of the key concepts that we talked about, and we intend to share that, with all of you, post the webinar. And we would want to keep engaging. We would want to keep discussing the various possibilities of using 360 in your organizations. So before we close, I just hope that we have been able to, tingle your thinking sensations a bit, to think about how you can really apply 360, how you can use this powerful tool for unique use cases within your organizations. It should not be limited just to appraisal and feedback as it was traditionally. So we are open to hearing from you, open to learning from you. Do drop us a line if you believe that there are certain use cases that can be used, and we are happy to sort of advise you, work with you on how that can be made possible. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you to all the panelists, and we look forward to speak to you again sometime soon. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Hello. हाँ जी. I have taken video of the entire chat and the questionnaire. अरे वो ब्लैक बॉक्सेस क्यों आ रहा था? अच्छा, एक मिनट.